Hi everyone, I'm Freddie, and today I'll be going over some of my favorite reads from 2024. Last year I read 119 books, and I am notoriously awful at picking favorites in general, but we'll do our best. But that does mean that these aren't in like the order of which ones I like best. They're just in the order that I read them in to make it easier for myself so I don't have to like try to put them in a specific order or anything like that. They're just in the order I read them, and that's it. Now I did reread quite a few books, but I excluded them from this list, so only new reads will be mentioned. As a caveat, as I mentioned, I'm really bad at picking favorites. So several of these are just like series that I read. But it does mean that some of the series are basically, this is one of my favorite series of the year. Not meaning that all of the books were 5 stars or anything, but just that overall, I really enjoyed reading the series. And for some of those series, I did reread some of the earlier books, but then newer books were part of the favorite new reads thing. Does that make sense? I think it does. It's fine. But with that said, let's just get straight into my first favorite of the year. And that's gonna be Chronicles of Ancient Darkness by Michelle Paver. Now that's the name of the series. This first book is Wolf Brother. Now this is one of the series where I did reread some of the first books and then I read the rest of the series. There's 9 books in total and I read 7 of them for the first time. This is a middle grade young adult age level book series. It's fantasy, but it's set in like a Paleolithic era, very Stone Age inspired. And we follow Torak, who is 12 in this first book. He's recently been orphaned by a demon-possessed bear, and he finds a wolf cub who has also recently been orphaned, not by a demon bear, but by something else. And they end up bonding and kind of going on an adventure to figure out what is infecting the forest that they live in, what is causing this demon bear to be here, all these kinds of things. And basically we follow them growing up throughout the series, growing up together, which is part of what I really love because they both start out as kids, right? And they're growing together. And I just also really enjoy how well researched these books are, both in regards to like methods of making things during the Stone Age, animal behavior, culture and superstition, and these kinds of things. Just, I feel it's a delight to read. They're not very long books. They read quite fast. And yeah, I really enjoyed reading them. I read them within like the first month or 2 of the year. Like one day I read 2 books in one day. They are around like 300 pages and they are middle grade, so it's relatively large writing and everything. But still, I really enjoy these. I love the bond between Torak and Wolf and other bonds they develop throughout the years. And I also just think that the overall plot is quite interesting, quite thrilling. Throughout the books, they go to different parts of like the forest, different parts. They go north, they go out to the coast and out to some clans that live on islands. So you learn a lot about different cultures within this world, how they see things, how their superstitions are, how they make things, all these kinds of things. And I just find it incredibly fascinating. So this was my first of the favorite reads of last year. Next up, we have another series, but a series where I read all of them for the first time last year, and that would be Arcane Ascension by Andrew Rowe. I really love this series. This is a progression fantasy where basically kids at a certain age are sent into this spire to be tested in, is it a judgment or testing? I don't, it has a name, but they're sent in and they go through like it's kind of like a dungeon thing, but in a tower where they have different like puzzle rooms and different things they have to do. And if they survive this ordeal, they will be granted a magical power. And it's basically like a stamp that they get somewhere on their body. The type of stamp determines what kind of magic they can do, and where it's placed kind of determines how they do it, or how they best do it at least. And normally when you get your power and you leave this tower, you lose all memory of what happened. So you have no idea what you went through, how you got there. At least that's what normally happens. But for our main character, Corin, that's not quite how it goes. Things kind of go awry when he's in the spire. And one of the reasons that he really wanted to go into the tower is that his older brother, never came out when he went into the tower to receive his powers, and it kind of caused a mess in his family, and he wants to repair his family by finding out what happened to his brother and potentially rescuing him if he's still in the tower. Things happen, he ends up retaining his memories of what happened, but he doesn't get the mark that he was hoping for and that his family was hoping for. So he ends up having to go a bit of a different direction when he then goes to the school where they train these magical abilities, and has to end up being very inventive. And he is a very like inventive person. He's also, to me, very relatable. As I was reading this series, I several times like sent a snap to some of my friends, like a picture of some text, and being like, "Oh, this is so relatable." And one of my friends kept being like, "Yeah, relatable to you probably, not to me," because He reads, to me, very autistic coded. And I know that Andrew Rowe did write him with like neurodivergent traits, but not necessarily with a specific diagnosis in mind. So he's written with several traits that could be interpreted in several different ways. But to me, it reads very, like, a lot of it is very relatable to me, which means that he reads very autistic coded to me because autistic. But I just really like him. And I know that that's not necessarily everyone's experience with reading Corin. Because of some of these traits, he can be a bit off-putting for some people, which, fair. But I really enjoy reading him. I really enjoy the magic system, the whole setup of the story. It's very interesting. It is also very like technically detailed on how the magic works, especially because Corin is like really digging into how everything works to figure out what he can do. And again, that's not interesting for everyone, but I really enjoy it. It's also set in a world where Andrew Rowe has several other series, so I ended up reading those as well in the order that he recommends. I think it's like the first two, Arcane Ascension, and then jumping to some other stories. I don't think you necessarily need to read all of the books. I did because I wanted to know all of the things, but my favorites are definitely Arcane Ascension in general, and the next book is coming out soon, so I'm super excited for that. Anyways, I really loved reading this series, and that's why it is on this list. Next on my list, we have a single book for once, and not an entire series, kind of, because I had read the entire series before, several times before actually, and that would be System Collapse by Martha Wells. This is the 7th installment in the Murderbot Diaries. The Murderbot Diaries is made up of mostly novellas of about 250 pages, and then one full novel. And this is the 7th installment, and it's also one of these novellas that's, I think it's like 250 pages. And if you don't know what Murderbot Diaries is about, it's a science fiction story. In it, we follow a sec unit who calls themselves Murderbot. And a sec unit is a construct that's a mix of organic and robotic parts. And sec unit is built to be security for humans. What Murderbot really wants is actually just to be left alone and be allowed to watch their TV shows, their media, that's what they call it. In the first novella, All Systems Red, in the series, we have Murderbot working as security for a group of humans that are doing like planetary survey. What they don't know is that Murderbot has actually hacked its governor module, which is what controls it and makes sure that humans can control it. Not because it wants to do anything bad to humans, but just because it wants to make sure that no one can force it to do something it doesn't want, because there are some spotty things that happened in its past that it doesn't quite remember, because some of its memory was wiped, and it's kind of trying to figure out what happened. But overall, Murderbot is just an anxious little being who wants to be left alone and wants to watch its media, but at the same time also wants to protect humans without interacting with them and being confused by them. It just wants to hide away, watch its media, and just for once have the humans follow its like security guidelines and what it tells them to do. It's rough being Murderbot. This is a series that I've reread several times. I listened to it on audiobook. I really like the audiobook narrator. There's I want to say Amazon Prime adaptation coming out this year, and I'm both nervous and excited for it because I feel like it'll be hard to adapt it for the screen, because it's mostly Murderbot thoughts and like data streams and things like that, because we are in Murderbot's head. So I'm very interested to see how they do. So I am excited and apprehensive. I can't really say much specifically about what System Collapse is about because it is the 7th installment, but I did really enjoy it, as I've enjoyed everything in this series. So I really enjoyed this. Next up, we have another single book, but again, because it's a follow-up to a series that I've read several times. That would be The Sunshine Court by Nora Sakovic. This is the first book in a trilogy following her original trilogy, All for the Game. So I can't say super much about what this specific book is about, but I can say that it overlaps a little bit with the third book in the first trilogy. So you see a bit of that from the point of view of the character that we follow into this new trilogy. And it is a character that we know from the first books. I really enjoyed it. Otherwise, it wouldn't be on this list, right? It's hard to put into words what this trilogy is, because it's one of those book series where I didn't go into it expecting to love it, and then I became obsessed, and I can't necessarily explain why, but I feel like it's a series where either you become obsessed or you hate it. Like, I don't think there's any in between. I've never seen any in betweens, at least. Like, either you're obsessed or you hate it, and I'm obsessed. But in the original trilogy, we follow Neil, who is basically on the run, has a lot of different identities. There are some very shady things in his background, and all he really wants to do is play a game called Exy, which is made up by the author. It has it's a mix of like lacrosse and some other games. I'm not reading it for really the game part of it, but there's just something about these characters that are that just make me obsessed with them. But Neil basically ends up being recruited for a team that he really doesn't want to play for because first off, they're kind of an awful team, and it's made up of a bunch of troubled youth. That's kind of the coach's recruitment strategy. But one of the players, who is a high profile player who was injured and is now on this team, knows Neil from his past, even if he's forgotten him. So he's worried that he'll recognize him and then he'll be in deep shit. And then there's mafia involved. There's a whole, it's hard to explain, but it's just, honestly, to me, it's just so good, and I'm obsessed. And this book, The Sunshine Court, I just flew through it. I loved it. The second one in the trilogy just came out a couple of weeks ago, I think, and I haven't gotten around to it yet because I've been busy with other books, but I am very excited to read it. I just want to reread The Sunshine Court first to refresh my brain about everything that happened, and I will soon get to it. But yeah, I love this book. Again, like, it's hard to put into words, and it's one of those books that I'm like, I don't necessarily recommend them to people because, like, I have no idea where they would fall on the obsessed or hated binary. I know where I fall. Anyways, that's why this is also on my list. Next up, we have a series where I read the entire thing in a couple of weeks. I listened to it on audiobook, and it was a series that I found through, I think it was actually during the International or the American Pride Month, which is June, right? That's not when Pride is in Denmark, so I always kind of forget. On the r/fantasy subreddit, there was someone asking for recommendations that was LGBT plus, and this was mentioned, as one that people often forget, in part because it's like the first books were published in the 90s, and it's a fantasy series with a queer couple, and like, I didn't think they were publishing that kind of thing in the 90s. Anyways, what I'm talking about is Nightrunner by Lynn Llewellyn. It's a 7-book series, and I thoroughly enjoyed most of the books. I think there was one that I gave 3 stars, and I felt like that was the weakest in the series, but the rest of them, so good. In the first book in this series, Luck in the Shadows, we follow Alec, who is taken prisoner for a crime he did not commit, but he ends up bonding with his cellmate Serigal, who is kind of a bit of a jack of all trades. He spies, he thieves, he blends into crowds of nobles and things like this. And Serigal offers to take Elegon as his apprentice. And they end up being embroiled in like this. There's war building, there's plots, and there's a lot of politics and everything. And I really, really enjoyed this series. I really enjoy Alec and Serigal's like building bond and everything throughout the books. And I just generally like, I really like the world building, as well. There were a lot of side characters that I also really liked. And it was a really good series. And it was one of those series where I was listening to it on audiobook, and I was basically making up things to do in order to keep listening. I was cleaning just to excuse listening to this audiobook. I was like in it, and I was very focused, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really enjoy Alec and Serigal, and it's definitely a series I could see myself either buying to own physically at some point, or at the very least rereading on audiobook. But I might also like buy them physically, because I would not mind owning them at all, and I wouldn't mind reading them physically either. Yeah, I'm not sure I like explained what it's about super well, but it's really good. Next up on my list, I have a duology that I think is quite well known and quite praised as well. That would be the Radiant Emperor duology with She Who Became the Sun and He Who Drowned the World. Of the two, I think I gave She Who Became the Sun 4 stars and He Who Drowned the World 5 stars. It destroyed me. Basically, this is historical fantasy. It's very, very heavily inspired by Chinese history, specifically it's like a reimagining of the Ming Dynasty's first emperor. And in it, we follow Shu, who lives whose family is super poor. They live in like a famine-struck village. Everything is awful. A seer comes by, foretells that her brother will have greatness in his life, and she will basically be nothing. And then her brother dies. And after her brother dies, she basically goes, well, I'm gonna take his identity and go and enter this monastery that he was supposed to go to. And basically ends up taking over this prophecy of greatness. This is set in 1345, where the Mongols ruled China. And there is a lot of strife and a lot of war and a lot of famine. But these books are really, really good. They did destroy me a little bit at times, but I like that books. Destroy me, please. These books are really, really good. I really recommend them. I really enjoyed them. We follow Shu, of course, and then also some other characters. And ooh, I have had some conflicted thoughts and feelings when I was reading these books because not all of the characters are working together. A lot of feelings, a lot of emotions. So good. And next up on my list, I have another one that destroyed me emotionally. And knowing this author, I shouldn't be surprised. I am talking about The Wilful Princess and the Piebald Prince by Robin Hobb. And knowing Robin Hobb, I should not be surprised that I was emotionally devastated. But this is like 150 pages. This is a novella. If you don't know Robin Hobb, she wrote the Realm of the Elderlings series, which is made up of 4 trilogies and 1 quartet, and I love them, love them, love them. And this is a novella set way before the Realm of the Elderlings, but set in the same universe, and it's about characters that we hear about in the realm because they are historical figures, but it's been a long time and people aren't remembering everything right, but you hear them mentioned several times. And reading this made me so angry and so sad at the same time because I'd already read most of the other Realm of the Elderlings books, so I had an idea of how these characters were remembered in history. And then reading about what happened in the actual history, furious and so sad. And honestly, with 150 pages, it's just, how does she do it? I don't understand. There's also, like in this edition at least, there's like illustrations, which is nice. How does she cause me to have so many emotions in so few pages? I don't understand. I mean, I know, again, I should know. I've read the other Realm of the Elderlings books, and I know how emotionally devastating I find them. But how? And basically, this is actually split up into, there's part 1, which is the Wilful Princess, and then part 2, which is the Piebald Prince. It's in the same time period, but it's a generational shift between the 2 stories. And of course, even if it made me very angry and very emotional, there is a reason this is on my favorites list, because, well, for one, it cost me so many emotions with so few pages. Hobb's writing is amazing. Her characters are amazing, even with barely any pages. And it just made me so, so furious. And so, the feeling of injustice when thinking about how the memory of these characters is portrayed by people in the future in the other books, it just feels so unfair. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. But when I read it, when I finished it, I had that feeling of, oh no, next time I read, and I'm planning on rereading the whole Realm of the Elderlings this year, and I just know that every time I hear about these figures now, I will be even more emotional than I was reading through the series the first time. I will say that I think you can totally read this on its own. You don't need, because this happens, it's a historical setting, right? So you don't need to know anything from the future books, but it does give a lot of context. Both directions, I would say. This gives me extra context for when I reread the books. Having read it before would also have given me extra context, but I think I do prefer having read this after. I can't say for sure. So if anyone has read it the other way around and have any opinions on it, please let me know, because I'm curious. If you've read Realm of the Elderlings and you haven't read this, I highly recommend reading it. It's so good. And last on my list of favorites that I read in 2024 is The Sunlit Man by Brandon Sanderson. This is one of the special project books that was part of the Kickstarter, which is why I had this beautiful edition. This lots of art. I'm going to find something that's non-spoilery art. There's also art in the book. I had heard that it was a lot of people's favorite of the secret projects. I will admit, this is so far the only secret project I read, because I've been busy, but I have them. I just need to get to them. But I really enjoyed this. I was trying to reread Stormlight Archive before Wind and Truth came out. I didn't make it. I mistimed it. And I also, as I was rereading, I found out that this is apparently also somewhere in Stormlight Archive, and then I've now seen conflicting things, whether people think it should be read before or after Wind and Truth. I definitely see why people say after, but I read it before. I also ended up deciding to catch up on all the other Cosmere I was missing, so I ended up reading The Lost Metal, which is the 7th Mistborn book that I was missing, reading a lot of the short stories, reading Elantris. I had a lot to catch up on, so I ended up not reading Wind and Truth until the beginning of this year, because I got caught up reading a lot of other Sanderson works. This book is set in the Cosmere, but in the future of the Cosmere, and in it we follow Nomad, who is a world hopper, and he's just arrived to a planet. It seems weird. It's basically it's not very big, and the sun is extremely intense, so it's kind of Mad Maxy, where they're living on these traveling ships platforms that can couple and decouple and all these kinds of things, because they're constantly fleeing the sun. And he kind of gets thrust into the whole situation there, and it's hard to say more. It's not like a super, like for Sanderson book, it's not super long, 400 something pages, but it's really good. I do feel like it's, like, I think you can definitely read it on its own, but there are a lot of references and a lot of hints and a lot of mentions that will mean nothing to you. It's not something that like takes up a lot of the plot or anything, by no means. There's just a lot of mentions and things, and so I feel like it is a book where it's definitely an advantage to have read other Cosmere books before reading this, but it is really good. I really enjoyed. It's really heavy, so I'm gonna put it down. Special editions, so heavy. So that was all of my favorite reads of last year, series and standalones and single books included. Did you have a favorite that you read last year? If so, leave it in the comments, and should I add it to my TBR if I haven't already read it? I can always use more books in my TBR, right? It's always growing. Yeah, and also, have you read any of these books, and what were your thoughts? Because I would like to hear both if you disagree with me or if you agree. It's always fun to gush with other people who also gush, but don't hold back if you've read any of these and you like hated them. Please tell me, because I want to know. Please. Either way, I really hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for sticking around all the way to the end. See you next time. Bye.